back to another episode of Spark the Conversation. I am here today with Chief of Police Keith Humphrey for the University of Memphis. I'm so happy to have Chief Humphrey with me on today. Thank you for joining me, Chief.
Sparkle, thank you for having me.
Yes, so Chief, let me give you some information about Chief. Chief is very cool, but I'm going to give you some information. Let me give you some information about him. I got this from University of Memphis, so let me give them their credit. Thank you, U of M, for his bio. We made some edits to it as well a few minutes ago. But Chief has 37 years of public service. He started in Arlington, Texas, and then he served as patrol, training, and internal affairs sergeant from 2000 to 2005. He was promoted to Geographic Patrol Sector Commander and then later became the Criminal Support Commander. Chief has served as Chief of Police for Lancaster, Texas from 2008 to 2011, Chief of Police in Mormon, Oklahoma from 2011 to 2019, and then Chief of Police of Little Rock, Arkansas in 2019, where he ultimately retired from there in 2022. And now he serves as Chief of Police at the University of Memphis when he started. He actually started here February 12th of 2024. So he actually just made his 1-year anniversary, and Chief is already, making changes on the campus of the University of Memphis with his real-time crime center. So I'm so excited to see what he has in store to get our safety, I don't want to say better, but under control and in a more safe environment for us and the students on campus as well as employees. Chief is also the former co-host of You and the Law podcast. So Chief is here to share his story about why he pursued a career in law enforcement and how we can rebuild the trust back in between law enforcement and the community. So let's get started. Chief, why did you pursue a career in law enforcement?
So Sparkle, that's a good question because I didn't start out that way. I actually started out as a pre-med major.
Wow.
And always been good in science and math. So after my first year of college, I decided I couldn't be dedicated to the science and the math part. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. It was just that I wasn't interested in it anymore. So I went to a business administration degree. After my sophomore year, Dallas police came to recruit, and I was going to leave because you needed 60 hours. My mother told me absolutely not. I was going to leave. Was I going to leave school? I was going to finish because she said, if you leave, you're not going back. So I'm glad I stayed. And so I got out and I went into the private sector for a couple of years, and then decided that I wanted to be a police officer. So I actually applied with Dallas Police. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
Didn't get hired.
Oh.
They told me I was too nice and too naive.
What's wrong with that?
I was just too nice. That's during the time when it was really, really rough being a police officer, and there were a lot of police officers being killed, and then a lot of things going on, and they thought I was too nice.
Okay.
And so that's when I decided to go somewhere else. And I knew from day one I wanted to be a chief. I wanted to not only be able to change it a little bit, I wanted to be able to make major decisions that would positively impact the communities and the department. So it's been an amazing, it's been eventful 37 years, but it's been a lot of hard times. And it's you learn to rely on your faith. So my three foundations are confidence, faith, and humility. Well, actually, faith first. Faith, confidence, and humility. You have to rely on your faith to get through a lot of the tough times. You have to be confident, not arrogant. There's a difference between the two. Confidence means that you make a mistake and you learn from that mistake and you build from it. You admit that you made a mistake, but next time you do it, you're prepared. So it doesn't mean you know everything. It means you're willing to learn. And humility means you're humble. It's humble. You have to be humble into this job.
That's true, Chief.
You have to. There's no way you can do it without being humble.
So speaking of, you said you always knew that you wanted to be a chief.
Yeah.
So what obstacles did you face moving up the ladder?
Not a lot of people at that time who looked like you and I.
Yeah.
And when you say you want to be a chief, a lot of times people are saying, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. I'm one of these people that I did a lot of stuff on my own time. I took the difficult assignments. I worked midnight shift. I went and learned a lot on my own time without getting overtime. So I was always said, well, he's trying to show off. And no, I wanted to learn. Mm-hmm. And so the difficult time is just people realizing that you have the talent to do the job. Yeah. People realizing that you can, that you're hungry, that you have a passion. And then you have to realize there are individuals that when you tell them you want to be a chief, they don't actually want you to, they become a little bit insecure because they think you're going to push them for their job. But guess what? I want people to push me for my job. I want to make people better than me. Yeah. And so the main thing is just getting people to respect you. Mm-hmm. I think you earn respect, but getting people to respect you because you have to know what you're doing, especially when you look like you and I. Right. You actually have to be 10 to 20 times better. Mm-hmm. And you have to make sure that you know what you're talking about. You have to have some wins under your belt. Mm-hmm. And so that was the most difficult part, getting people to realize, hey, this young man is ready. Mm-hmm. Because they already have, a lot of times there's people that are projected to be chiefs. Yeah. And they're putting a lot of effort into those individuals. And those individuals who really, really, really want to be chiefs, sometimes they're kind of left in the back seat. Mm-hmm. So you have to push your way up and show that I can do this job and I really want to do it.
Right. And when Chief and I met, I told him, I was like, it was rare for me to hear about a Black man being police chief. I'm not saying that it doesn't occur, but Chief is like the second police chief that I've met who's a Black man in that position. So I was like, wow, Chief, like, I want you to tell your story because it's not common. And at least not from my point of view, from what I've seen. And so I thought that was amazing to hear that he actually was chief in 3 different states. So clearly he is an expert. He knows what he's doing. Chief, and you said something. You said that a lot of people don't want, when you say that you want to be chief, a lot of people take that as like competition, like they don't want you to push them out of their seat, but you want to see that person grow. And that's rare for someone that's in like a supervisor role to want to see those that are underneath them to rise up to be in that position that they're in. So I think that's good that you said that you wanted your officers that were under you to try to come for your position, because you like, look, I'm ready to retire. Somebody got to.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the difference between a leader and a manager. Right. And so I believe, and let me just share this with you really quickly, Sparkle. So the thing I would like to share with the viewers is that you haven't done your job as a chief when you leave, and if they have to go outside and find your replacement, you haven't done your job. The next chief, you're the person who takes the job after you or gets the job after you should come from within your organization. You should be grooming that person and others. And so that's one of the things that I find is a level of success when you can say the person that worked for me was able to inherit my job when I leave. The other thing is I've been fortunate and I've been blessed that I have 14 individuals who have worked directly for me that have gone on to be police chiefs in other cities. Wow. Or sheriffs or assistant city managers, because I've mentored them and I've put them in positions, training, go to meetings, discussions about what it takes to be a chief.
And I agree with you. I always wonder why when we have a search for chiefs, why we go outside and why, we never look at those that were already there, because they know the ins and outs. So you have someone that's coming outside trying to learn the ins and outs. So I always wonder why that happened.
You have to learn, and I tell young men and women that every day is a job interview. And a lot of times when you see them going outside, it's that the person who may be next in line hasn't prepared. Or there's also the fact that we're going to go outside to see how this individual, this internal individual, stands up against outside competition to see if they're really going to rise to the top.
That's interesting. But so you've been police chief in 3 different states. How was each experience different?
So being a chief in Texas, in the Dallas area, that's where I'm from, I knew a lot of people already. So they knew my work ethic. I know how they were. I knew how they worked. They knew how I worked. I was easy to make partnerships in the area that I was in. When you go to another state and being an outsider, you have to start over. So you have to prove to people, and people say you don't have to prove anything. Yeah, you do. That they made the right decision, especially when you're competing against internal candidates that thought they were entitled to the job. There's a lot of cutthroat situations that go on. A lot of times the internal candidates that you go up against, compete against, they don't want you to get the job, and they don't want to help you. So a lot of times you have to find other people to give you some insight on what's actually going on, the policies and procedure. Police work is police work, but it's the policies and procedures and state laws that change in every state. So you have to become familiar with that. So, and then it comes down to the fact people will say, well, he's only got this job because the way he looks. And so it's always going to be, you're going to get a lot of people going to critique you. They're going to armchair quarterback you. But one thing I do know, Sparkle, when you know what you know, nobody can tell you that you don't know what you know. And what I mean by that, when you are a student of the profession and you are, and you live by those 3 principles, you're going to be all right. And that's what happened. That's what's happened to me. I've been fortunate. I've been outside, the first outside chief in the history of some of these organizations. The first in Lancaster, I was the first outside chief and the first African American chief. In Norman, which at one point had been a sundown town. Are you familiar with that term? So a sundown town, they were prevalent throughout the nation back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And if you were a person of color, you had to be out the streets by sundown. It was a crime not to be off the streets. And so Norman was a sundown town. So I was the first outside chief and the first African American chief to get that job. And so it came with some challenges of, well, you're only here because they're trying to fill a quota, this and that and the other. But once people see you know what you're doing, there are a lot of them that will fall in and say, we'll follow you. And can you help me get to where you are? And then there are those that they never want to, they're not going to fall in, but you still have to do your job because you are selected for these positions. They don't select you to make easy decisions. They select you to make the right decision and crucial decisions at crucial times.
That's true.
Because any decision you make, you got to live with that.
That's true. Yeah. Chief out here making history, y'all. He said he was the first African American chief of police in Lancaster and in Mormon.
Yeah.
Was it Mormon?
Norman,
not Mormon. I apologize.
For the University of Oklahoma. Yes, yeah.
Chief making history. At the end of the day, they say what they want to say.
I appreciate it.
He's the first in those two cities. Okay, Chief. So these have been some tough times right now between law enforcement and the community. And I really do hope it gets better. Where do you think the disconnect is between law enforcement and the community?
So a lot of the things we're seeing now, we contributed to it. We lost credibility in a lot of areas.
And when you say we, you're talking about
law enforcement has lost credibility in a lot of areas because of things like George Floyd, Michael Brown, and other situations, Sandra Bland, And so even when we would get 20 steps ahead, one of those incidents would have happened or occur, and we get knocked back a mile. And so once we finally get caught back up, something else happens. So I think it's the fact that we were not humble and recognize what our job is. We're to be guardians, not warriors. I think some people have that warrior mindset, but we're really guardians. You have to have that guardian mindset to realize that our responsibility is to protect and serve. Yeah. Now, if we have to go to the point of protection, guardians protect. When you get in that warrior mindset, you just have you have tunnel vision on how to do things. Guardian gives you a full view of how we need to do things. I think we didn't do some of the things that we needed to do long term. I think some of the terms and opportunities that we had, we didn't take advantage of. And so I think it has spilled over, and people are having a difficult time trusting us. And then the other thing is we try to justify when we're wrong. And sometimes, Sparkle, we're just wrong. And we have to fall on the sword and say, yeah, we shouldn't have done that way. Yes, this officer made a mistake. Yes, as a chief, I didn't lead my officers in the correct way. But we try to become perfect, and we're not perfect. And we don't talk.
Yeah.
We don't work with our communities like we should. There are a lot of departments out there that do, but there are some that don't. And one of the things I like the viewers to know is that 85% of the police departments in the nation are 10 officers or less. Only 20% of the police departments have more than 50 officers. So really and truly, we have a lot of small departments that don't have the funding to go through certain types of training or engage the community with proactive initiatives. They don't. And so I think that's part of the problem. Because what happens is when you have a situation like George Floyd, we all go into defense mode. He had a criminal history, but his criminal history had nothing to do with the outcome of what happened to him.
Sure.
So I think that's what kind of says that we just lost our way with the community. We were so focused on arrest and tickets and stuff like that.
Yeah. Chief's so real. I told y'all, Chief gonna tell it like it is. Because it's rare. Chief said, listen, we didn't take some things, we just fall on the sword. Like, we didn't do right. And I like that about Chief. Since I met Chief always been real. He just said it like it is, and Chief all right with me.
Sparkle, another thing is the community, and then the communities didn't hold us accountable. They didn't know, some of them didn't know how, and they gave up on holding us accountable. So I think it's a two-way street.
So how do you think law enforcement can rebuild their trust with the community?
The chiefs set the tone. The chief has to push that toward the officers and the community and be held accountable. You have to have a plan. You have to let your officers and make them familiar with the plan, and the community needs to know the plan. So the community knows. So checks and balances. It's a check-off list. Well, if you say you're going to implement body cameras, when you're going to do it. If you say that your officers are going to go through sensitivity training, have they done that? How often do you update your policies? So the community has the police chief has to say, this is what we're going to do, and the community has to help them hold them accountable. And then you got to know what you need. So I can say, this is what we need in Norman, but I might not be able to use those same initiatives in Little Rock or Memphis and stuff like that. So you have to design a program that is conducive to your needs of that respective department and community.
Right. And when, like you said, when the chief evaluates that, I'm assuming that takes time, but it shouldn't take too long. Would you think, Chief?
No. Every department should have a strategic plan. So, they tell you anytime a new chief comes in, the first 60 to 90 to 100 days are pretty much an observation period, unless something drastic occurs and you got to move right then and there. But you have to take advantage of that observation period. That's when you're talking to, you'll hear me say the term internal and external stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Internal are the officers, mm-hmm. External is the community. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to meet with those individuals. And you have to say, okay, what are your needs? What can I do for you? Where do we need to improve? What's our strengths and what's our opportunities? And sometimes the opportunities are longer list than the strengths. And that's okay. You can work. And you can't set unrealistic goals. So I've never told anybody that I'm going to eliminate crime. What I say that every initiative that we're going to do is to reduce crime. That sounds better to say, well, I'm going to eliminate it, because that's a false promise. You have to react immediately when there's misconduct by someone in the department. You have to act immediately, and you have to fall on the sword and say, that's not what we're training. That's not our philosophy. That's not our mission and vision. But this is what we're doing to change it, to improve it. And it's okay to bring outside people in also to help critique. Yeah. So it's not just one thing. Sometimes it's that paradigm shift, something new, mm-hmm. and you have to have the officers to buy into it. You're not going to get everybody to buy in, mm-hmm. but you have to show them what you're doing so they'll know where you're trying to, or they know where you're trying to go. Right. You know, because people want to know, okay, where are we going? Mm-hmm. And when a chief can competently explain their vision, mm-hmm. you're fine. And
I like that you said sometimes it's okay to bring outside, because sometimes you need fresh eyes. When you get a plan together, and you've been looking at it the whole time, it looks good to you. But when you have someone else come from outside who's also an expert in the same field that you're doing, they look at it and say, okay, well, take this approach. Have you considered this? Yeah. And it makes you think about, well, I didn't consider that, because you're in it, but they're not. So that's good to say that you can bring outside people in to evaluate the effectiveness of the plan that it could take. Right. And I also think that it's important when you're rebuilding trust, when you said that you have to have a plan. When you get and the community has to know what they want as well, mm-hmm. to get those law enforcement, those pivotal people in the community together, and they sit at the table and everybody has to listen to each other. That's a good point, because I'm going to tell you, there's been several times when I've told my command staff, we're going to this meeting and we're just going to listen. Mm-hmm. We're not going to try to be answer, because that comes across as defensive. Mm-hmm. But what we're going to do is we're going to listen. Some of it's not going to be pretty. We're going to take notes. We're going to give them a time period when we're going to have a response, and we're going to meet that deadline. And then we're going to come back and present our plan of action to them. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people just want to vent. It's true. And a lot of people don't. You know, they don't want to hear that, because they're thinking, a lot of times they don't hate you because they don't know you. They're upset with the situation, and they just want to vent. So let them vent. Listen. Then say, hey, I hear you. These are some notes. We're going to get back. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. And if you say 2 weeks, you better say 2 weeks. You better be back in 2 weeks with a plan of action. I like it, Chief. Yeah. So, Chief, what are some programs that you implemented when you were chief in Lancaster, Norman? I got it right, Norman. Yeah. Norman, Oklahoma, and then in Little Rock. What are some programs that you implemented to help bridge that gap when you got there? Like you said, you had the evaluation period. Mm-hmm. And what are some things that you saw that you didn't really, we can do this better, and that you implemented in those cities that made things better, that turned things around? So the first thing I wanted to know, who were the gatekeepers in the community and what were the biggest problems? And so I immediately reached out to those individuals, some of the individuals who didn't like police or didn't understand police, and even those individuals who were very pro-police. You have to speak to both. And then it's a diverse group, the LGBTQ community, the Hispanic community, Asian community. You bring everybody to the table and you listen. And then you figure out, okay, we don't have any for the Hispanic community, we don't have enough Spanish-speaking officers, or we don't have a victim's advocate to address the concerns of the Hispanic community.
We don't have a victims advocate that addresses the concerns of our senior community. We don't have an advocate that addresses the need of our juvenile community, juveniles. So you have to ensure that everyone in that city, there's some type of resource within the police department that can meet the needs of those individuals. We never had, when I was in Little Rock, there had never been a meeting between Black Lives Matter Police Department. There had never been a meeting between the LGBTQ community and the police department. In Norman has a large Muslim community. There had never been any type of sit-down meeting or any kind of relationship between the Muslim community and the police department, because there was this perception that the Muslim community, that were members of the Muslim community, that were terrorists. So what I did when I was hearing that, I met with the FBI, special agent in charge. And I said, are there any issues with me meeting with the Muslim community? Is there any concerns regarding? And they go, not in Norman. So I was able to take that back to my offices and say, I did the research from the FBI. And the FBI is saying there's not a problem here. So guess what we're going to do? Well, guess what that resulted in? Us hiring the first Muslim officer. Having that relationship with the LGBTQ community, I ended up hiring the first first male, gay male for the police department. It wasn't anything trying to get fanfare. It was just the fact that we were a inclusive and welcoming department. Had the media wanting to speak with those individuals, say no, because this isn't a fanfare. This isn't a show. They're police officers. I don't see them as LGBTQ. I don't see them as Muslim. I see them as police officers who happen to be Muslim and who happen to be LGBTQ. Those are the type of things. Having those conversations, inviting people into the community, into the police department. Body worn camera program. We started that. We started a juvenile intervention program to where we started seeing certain signs that certain juveniles were headed the wrong direction. And we were able to sit down with the parents and meet with them. And a lot of them didn't know. And what we found, Sparkle, is a lot of the parents didn't have some of the basic needs. They may not have a home. They may not be able to put food on the table. They may not have transportation. They may not be able to clothe their kids. So what do? Is you get that family in touch with the wraparound services to ensure that they can provide those basic needs. So those were just some of the programs that we did. It's you have to be open to new things. I'm a person that I don't have a problem trying new things. And so that's what we did. It's all about the community with me.
And I think here in Memphis, our juvenile pop, that it's like skyrocketing. And so when you said that you put families in touch with those people to get them the help that they needed, I think that's great. Because we don't know what they're lacking, but I hope it gets better here in Memphis.
I think it will.
I really do.
But one of the things I did in Little Rock is I was one of the first chiefs. I was the first chief in Arkansas to acknowledge that violent crime is a public health issue. So it's not just about violence. There's a lot more. So everybody, education, social services, law enforcement, mental health, physicians, all have to come to the table.
I'm glad you touched on mental health. How did you implement any programs or any trainings to help your officers deal with those individuals that have mental health problems or issues?
Crisis intervention training. It's called CIT, and officers get additional training in recognizing those individuals who may be in crisis. We are going to a less lethal form of force here, which is taser. Okay. However, not an officer on this department here at the University of Memphis will be able to carry a taser unless they are CIT certified. And tasers are less lethal form of force. And so, but in order because it's a unique tool in itself. And we want, being on a college campus, we want those officers who carry those, who are assigned tasers, to have that extra training when it comes to recognizing someone in crisis. So we're excited about that. So we're not just giving them to the officers and say, go forward. They have to earn the right to wear that based on the privilege to wear that based on the fact that they've got that additional training.
I told y'all, Chief wasn't playing. Chief doing it up here. Chief, do you have any final words before we get ready to close out? The conversation has been great. I have enjoyed having Chief and gave us some insight on how his journey started, what he's implemented while he was chief, and how he thinks that we can bridge the gap between the community, because these are very rough times right now. Yeah. And I appreciate you for being transparent.
Sure.
With your responses and your feedback and your experiences, because a lot of times people, want to hold things close to the vest.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your transparency of those in law enforcement, or how law enforcement needs to take accountability for some things.
Sure.
But I think we all have to work together to accomplish one goal, which is for our streets to be safer, our communities to be safer. No one should be scared to get out of their car at their own home, or go to the grocery store, go to the gas station. So I think everybody needs to come together, and ultimately the one goal is safety. That's my opinion.
It is.
What do you think?
So I think the main thing is we can't wait, and this is for the community and the police department. We have to be proactive. We can't wait until something happens before we demand more from our police officers, and the police department can't wait till something gets too far in the weeds before we reach out to our community. There should always be open dialogue. Citizens, local government have to hold their police department accountable, but they have to know how. They have to ask questions. Every police department should have their policies online, so citizens can go and say, okay, they didn't follow the policy. Let's see what we can, how we can make this better. You can't wait until something happens before you get concerned. So every day there should be those dialogues. And patrol officers, it doesn't always have to go all the way to the top of the chief. Patrol officers should be empowered to be problem solvers. And when they see blight, they should know how to contact the representative in the city that will deal with that. They shouldn't have to wait and, somebody else will deal with that. No, we're a police department. A police officer should never be in a position to tell someone we don't know. Period, point blank. We can't do that. Our job's too important.
That's true.
So that's it.
I love it. Any final words, Chief?
No, I appreciate you. This young lady is fire. She's off the chain. She's good. When I say off the chain, I'm impressed with this young lady. She's the epitome of professionalism. She's very, very sweet. But I can tell though, when she has to get you, she'll get you.
See, we're going to go and close out Spark the Conversation on today. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Spark the Conversation. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Spark the Conversation. And guess what, y'all? I am also on YouTube Music. So if you're on YouTube Music, you can find Spark the Conversation on there and listen to my episodes that I have coming up. So follow me on Instagram at Spark_the_convo. And you can also follow my Facebook page, Spark the Conversation. I will be back next week. Thank you for joining. Like and share. See you all.